Thank you so much. I am really feeling honored to present this topic on a day of non-violence. So take my regards. I congratulate the organizers for organizing such a good event on this special day. So let me share my screen because I have got a PowerPoint.
Shyam, could you grant her access, please? Thank you.
All right. So my presentation is Tibetan Buddhist metaphors of motherhood, feminist Buddhist approach to conflict resolution. So in this presentation, I aim to do several things. First thing is to introduce Tibetan Buddhism, although I mean, most of you know about it, but it is just for the audience who don't know about it. And how motherhood has been conceptualized from the Buddhist and feminist framework, and how Buddhist and feminist approach to conflict resolution can be understood, like whether they can support each other and what are their distinctive characteristics, and then how the potentials of this metaphor like motherhood can contribute to feminist approach, Buddhist feminist approach to conflict resolution. In the last slide, I would like to talk about His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama as an example of motherhood, and also an example of how Tibetan Buddhist approach to conflict resolution can promote to peace and non-violence. So origin of Tibetan Buddhism can be traced to the end of the 8th century CE in Tibet. It has roots in Vajrayana Buddhism in India. So it was at the invitation of Tibetan king, the Indian scholar traveled to Tibet, and then they combined Tibetan indigenous religion with Vajrayana vehicle of Buddhism, and as a result, Tibetan Buddhism emerged. So it has some common feature with other school of Buddhism. In fact, the core principles of Tibetan Buddhism is very much similar to other schools of Buddhism. And these core principles include 4 noble truths, especially truths on suffering, karma, interdependence, emptiness, and also ethics. Like these ethics include no killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, or no alcohol, and some other ethics as well. So Tibetan Buddhism, especially the Gelugpa school of Tibetan Buddhism, emphasize 3 principles of path, and that includes renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. So in these 3 aspects, bodhicitta a bit different. It indicates a very high altruistic intention to relieve all sentient beings from the suffering of cyclic existence. So in Tibetan Buddhism, Buddhahood is something where a person actually vows to come back to samsara again and to help other sentient beings. In the concept of emptiness, there are 4 different schools of Tibetan Buddhism. They understand emptiness in a different way. So I have used the school that His Holiness Dalai Lama schools, the Gelugpa school of Buddhism, which believes in Nagarjuna's theory on emptiness, that 2 level of truths. In 1 level, everything is in existence conditionally and impermanently, and in ultimate level there is no essence. And these 2 truths are overlapping in nature. Tibetan Buddhism has some distinctive features, and these distinctive features include tantric deities and rituals. There are lots of tantric deities and rituals which we don't find in other school of Buddhism. Secondly, the other feature for which it has drawn lots of attention from the Western women, and that is female enlightened beings. In Tibetan Buddhism, we have female enlightened Buddha, who is equally worshipped and equally revered, just like the male Buddha. And the monastic institution and organization are also different from the other Buddhist school. The leadership is also different, and the clothes that they wear and the nature of the monastic institution, the order, are also different from other Mahayana school of Buddhism and Theravada school of Buddhism. So how the metaphor of motherhood and gender have been understood in Tibetan Buddhism. So in Tibetan Buddhism, we see that the embodiment of greatest wisdom is a female archetype, and her name is Prajnaparamita, who is a female enlightened figure, and she has been associated with emptiness, the highest wisdom part of Buddhism. And she's called mother of all Buddhas. We also see female Buddha Tara, who has been worshipped with equal emphasis like male Buddha. And the female Buddhas are recognized for their quick response to suffering of the human being who call them. And here the motherhood qualities are invoked as a power and strength. So Tara has been often invoked when there is an emergency and humanitarian crisis, and she is considered to be a Buddha who can quickly respond to the disciple because she is of mother nature. So the story of Tara goes like this, like there was a princess called Tara, and she was a woman, and she was very spiritual, and she wanted to be a Buddha. And in Tibetan Buddhism, there is some prejudice or lines that tell that women cannot be a Buddha. Women need to pray so that she can come back as a man in next life and can be a Buddha. So when Tara was praying to be a Buddha, the monks came to her and told that she should pray so that she can come back as a man and then she can be Buddha. So Tara actually challenged this very dominant idea, and she said that I will be be women, and I want to come back as a woman and want to attain enlightenment in the form of women, and I want to help other beings who want to attain enlightenment in the form of women. So that story actually worked as an inspiration for many Buddhist practitioners. Especially we find the mention of these stories in the Buddhist feminists like Ayn Klein, Rita Cross, and Lama Tulsi Malian. All are based on North America, that they have mentioned Tara several times, that how Tara has been a source of inspiration to them to fight against sexism and misogyny within the institution. Lama Tulsi Elian, who is a American academic, feminist academic and Buddhist practitioner, she said that Tara was the first feminist in Tibetan Buddhism who challenged this male-dominated conception that one needs to come back as a male to be enlightened. And then we find the enlightened part of Tara, where she is actually sitting with a one leg stretched, and that indicates that she's always ready to help. And that feature we normally don't find any male deities, and so it shows that Tara is strongly associated with motherhood qualities. So in Tibetan Buddhism, motherhood qualities are invoked as a power and strength, not as a negative quality which will weak women or weak the personality. Rather, all male and female are told to nurture this quality and to cherish these qualities through several practice and rituals and disciplines. And motherhood has both wrathful and peaceful aspects. Like the peaceful aspects indicates harmony, and the wrathful aspect actually indicates protection. So both can be in coexistence. And so in the picture, we could see that in my left side, there is a one deity called Palden Lamo. She is also associated with Mother Kali, and she is considered to be the protectress of Tibet. And we could see that she is also a woman, and she is sometimes called the fierceful manifestation of a female Buddha. And so we could see that there are both sides of motherhood. Motherhood is definitely beyond gender. We find that in Tibetan Buddhist teaching and sutra, even practitioners are told to develop the qualities of motherhood to attain Buddhahood, especially for the practice of bodhicitta. So it is beyond gender, male and female, all can actually practice it. So practice of motherhood has been considered to be the highest ideal to cherish sentient being with compassion. There are several sutra which talks that, with what type of attitude a person should cherish a sentient beings. It is the attitude of a mother. And it is also told that one should think that all the sentient beings are just like mother, so that there is no judgment to treat any sentient beings, and to understand the suffering of all sentient beings from the concept of motherhood. But the special feature of Tibetan Buddhism's motherhood is that it includes the concept of renunciation and emptiness. So it is not like a Western sense of motherhood where it is only based on loving kindness and some, very raw emotions to a child, but also a very strategic, compassionate attitude and renunciation. And we find this type of concept when Buddha left her, wife and child for the love for sentient beings, which means for the sake of bigger purpose, one can actually detach from the samsara, whose nature is nothing but delusion and temporary happiness. We also find different Tibetan Buddhist yoginis like Machik Lobdron, Yeshe Sogdel, who are considered to be also embodiment of female Buddha. They also left their children and went to caves and had a meditation for many years. And we also find Machik Lobdron, she was also encouraging the children to, detach from the samsara and go to cave. So the concept of motherhood is a very different here, and we also find Prajna Paramita is considered to be motherhood or mother, who is actually embodiment of emptiness and renunciation as well. So altogether, it can be said the motherhood encompasses not only kindness but also renunciation and emptiness for the sake of helping others. So kindness is the main principle that governs everything, but renunciation and enlightenment are also there, which shape or reshape the action of the compassion. Concept of gender has been constructed as fluid category with some paradoxical dimension. Fluid category in the sense that in Tibetan Buddhism, there are some stories which came from definitely Theravada Buddhism as well, that it is said that in ultimate level there is no gender, but at the same time we find some paradoxes where it is told that having a female body means that you have a inferior karma or negative karma. As a result, you are in a state of suffering. So how these things could be understood, like the feminist Buddhist scholars, especially the Western feminist Buddhist scholars, they have given a new dimension to understand this issue, like having a female body. And according to Rita Gross, who is also a feminist Buddhist academic, she said that we need to understand it as a context specific, like when Buddhism came at that time, women were not allowed to have spiritual practice, women were only confined in the household activities. So by indicating that, one actually understood having a female body means having a negative karma. And she also said that if someone is born in United States, then she, as a woman, she doesn't need to pray this prayer because she will not face any structural problem, just like at the time, the way women used to face in Tibet and India. So we could see this prayer is there. At the same time, we also see that females are respected in Tibetan Buddhism as an embodiment of goddess-like figure like Dakini. Dakini is another goddess-like figure in Tibetan Buddhism who bestows spiritual wisdom to the devotees and disciples. So, and we find that in some teaching it is said that all women are Dakini, and the highest spiritual practitioner will see all women as embodiment of goddesses. So, which means the reverence for female bodies there, which came from tantric perspective. So again, this paradoxes is there. So at the in a way that women are told to pray so that they can come back as a man. At the same time, we have stories like Tara, and in the tantric dimension of Tibetan Buddhism, female body are worshipped, and female are also told that they could attain swift attainment if they practice, because the feminine qualities are very high qualities which are very good for attaining enlightenment. So we also find that there is a huge appreciation for feminine qualities, and it is not seen as a weak qualities the way it has been considered under a patriarchal framework, but also as empowering qualities. And so we see the nun, the first British nun, Tenzing Palmo, who faced huge sexism when she first came to the Tibetan monastic institution, and she was told by the monk to pray so that she can come back as a man. But her guru told her to focus on the feminine qualities and to know the Tibetan Buddhist yogini stories. And at some point, he said that women can actually attain swift attainment or Buddhahood if they really practice, because they are very receptive and something are in them naturally, so they don't need to strive for that. So this is definitely questionable from the feminist lenses, because aftermath we will see that how feminism is a bit suspicious about this category of feminine and motherhood. So by saying so, it should be noted that gender discrimination is present in the Tibetan Buddhist institution, like in the monastic order, but it is changing. For example, there was a time when women are not allowed to have the highest degree in Tibetan Buddhism, like Geshe-ma, but now they can have it. There was one German woman who has got Geshe-ma degree, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama is very much interested to promote women education and nuns education, and he has projects of promoting Nanari. And so this and different type of misogynistic texts are also found in the literature. So it is there, but it is changing. But one thing has not been changed, and that is the full ordination of Tibetan Buddhist nuns. Like, they cannot have the full ordination, but they can go to other Mahayana schools and monastic orders and can take the full ordination there. So as I said before, that it is quite paradoxical in nature. So there are two sides of it. Not necessarily, the gender question has been resolved in this paradigm. So now let's see what feminist approach to motherhood tells. The idea of motherhood is a complex notion in feminist literature. It is also called an unfinished agenda. It has been addressed mostly with suspicion as an obstacle to women empowerment. And we see in 1960s or 70s, when women liberation movement emerged in United States, the feminists, they normally didn't like the idea of motherhood that much. Like Betty Friedan talked about liberating women and telling women to give up the household work and be careeristic. And she didn't talk about how women will balance motherhood and career. And then we also find radical feminists like Sulamit Firestone, who said that women should get rid of the reproductive role, or women shouldn't confine themselves to the reproductive role. And this reproductive role is a kind of obstacle to women empowerment. But this area of feminism is quite gray, and it is full of contradictions. Like, it cannot be concluded that feminists are against motherhood, but we don't find a kind of appreciation for motherhood in the dominant feminist literature. It is more about how women's reproductive roles are confining women. So, but there are some feminist literature where these feminine qualities or motherhood has been taken as a high intelligence and a distinctive category, and as a sign of women empowerment and to develop the identity of women. So one of the area is psychology, Carol Gilligan's Ethics of Care, which talks about that how feminine quality like responsibility, relationship, caring for others are key to human survival. And interestingly, psychologist Carol has seen that autonomy, autonomy as illusionary and biggest, like one cannot have a full individualism and one is always connected to others. And what Carol Gilligan has said, that how women actually respond to a particular reasoning from in a different way in comparison to men. So where man actually emphasizes competition, dominance, achieving goal, women actually keep on emphasizing love, intimacy, and responsibility and relationship. So she has, of course, seen it as a higher intelligence, and she thinks that this is actually required for human survival. Carol Gilligan's approach was criticized by other feminists, saying that she is trying to taking back women to other stereotype typical attitude to gender and the biological determination of being a woman, but definitely Carol Gilligan's work has been inspiration for many women who want to actually valorize these qualities and want to see these qualities not as a sign of a passive or weak objectification, but as a sign of empowerment and women's personality. But the idea that whether these qualities will be beyond gender and whether both men and women can strive to have it is not very matured in feminist literature, like they're still caught in whether women should embrace these qualities or not. But they didn't do that much work to liberate these qualities from women's body and to present these qualities as a gender neutral, the way Tibetan Buddhism did. So I will take the question later once I finish the presentation. All right, so I was talking about that how feminist has approached to motherhood, and we have seen that feminist approach to motherhood is a bit different. Like they didn't liberate it going beyond gender, and they have talked about motherhood in a different way. Like there is a suspicion for motherhood, and but there are some feminist literature like Karen Gilligan who have developed ethics of care, and there is also a concept like there is also a concept like there is also a concept like matrilineal feminism or matricentric feminism that is coined by Andrea O'Reilly. So she's talking about how feminism should include this maternal thinking or standpoint from mother's view. And among this matricentric feminism, we find Sarah Rudick, who has framed the idea of maternal thinking as a distinctive way of thinking. And Sarah Rudick's idea of maternal thinking has been again supported lots of feminist ideas, especially feminist idea on international relationship. So it is said that how the maternal approach of kindness, compassion, and love can shape our approach towards any problem. So Adriana Rich, who is also speaking from matricentric feminism, she is telling that it is actually the patriarchal notion of motherhood, not the actual experience of mothering that was source of women oppression. So what she's telling that not necessarily motherhood is oppressive, but it is the patriarchal framework that are making women think that it is oppressive, and by motherhood will make them weak, and there is a clash between feminism and motherhood. But actually, this is the clash that is happening in a patriarchal framework. This clash will not be there if the patriarchal framework is not there and women is not placed in the secondary position, and men will be given the privilege. Many activists, women of color, saw in motherhood not only as a freedom but also as agency, especially Black women, and the concept of womanist position. They also see motherhood as a kind of distinctive characteristic of women. So feminist Buddhists like Ayn Klein, who has worked on Tibetan Buddhism and also on feminism, to her it is more like motherhood is a part of constructing subjectivity and motherhood is beyond gender. So what they have said that they have included motherhood in a positive way as an empowering quality, and they think that this Tibetan Buddhist concept of motherhood and the feminist approach of a mother, an independent mother, could be
Dr. Sharin, just to interject, your video, your PowerPoint is not visible.
Okay, let me share it. So feminist Buddhists like Ayn Klein has used the concept of motherhood to construct feminist Buddhist subjectivity, and so according to Tibetan Buddhist feminist, to them this concept of motherhood, female deities, and female deities symbolization of motherhood is not a problematic. Rather, they have taken it in a positive way. But definitely, there are some Tibetan Buddhist feminists who saw it as a problematic way, and they see that it is again an objectification of women and seeing women from a patriarchal lens. But as I said, that there is a positive and negative way to see Tibetan Buddhist relationship to motherhood and the way feminists actually perceive this connection. So after talking about feminist and Buddhist approach to motherhood, now I'm coming to feminist and Buddhist approach to conflict resolution. So Buddhist approach to conflict resolution has a historical and spiritual aspect. In the historical aspect, we see that in the different stories, and Buddha has been placed in a situation where he had to resolve the conflict, and so most of the time his approach to the resolution of conflict is based on inner transformation. We find that how there was a incident where two kings were supposed to start a war, and Buddha went there and she gave them teaching, and as a result their mind was transformed and they adopted non-violence rather than going for a war. So these are the historical incidents. Apart from that, we also have some incidents from the monastic orders where we found that Buddha is in a position where he has to face conflict or disharmony in the Sangha, and he is supposed to interfere. Not necessarily all the time it ended in a success, but we found there is a consistent effort to transform the mind towards non-violence and loving kindness. So these are the historical incidents which show that how Lord Buddha has approached to conflict, and there are spiritual aspects in the conflict resolution where in different sutra Lord Buddha has said that how conflict arises, like the reason of the conflict is definitely the mind. When mind is prone to attach to anger and negative qualities, then this conflict happens. So it is the consequences of the negative qualities of mind. So traditionally, Buddhism has focused on development of inner mind's enlightened quality like non-violence and kind and compassion, understanding that everyone is suffering in this samsara, which promotes empathy and loving kindness to both of the parties. So as a means to reduce suffering and conflict, that was the dominant approach in traditional Buddhism. But later we find that this approach to conflict resolution has been greatly shaped by the Enlightenment thoughts in 19th century and the influence of the Westphalian state system, where the Buddhist state and the Buddhist leaders have been in the situation where they have to go through a negotiation which should be legitimized and sanctioned by the modern Western system and the concept of international community. So this change is particularly noticed in the language, like the language the Buddhist scholars use, and we find the use of the word called human rights and peace, especially human rights, inclusiveness. Definitely one can argue that it was there in Buddhism, but the way they understand it, it's very much based on the Declaration of Human Rights and the other Enlightenment thoughts. There is also a gradual emphasis on change of external social structure for achieving peace. So now the contemporary Buddhist approach to conflict resolution, they understand conflict resolution not with the emphasis on inner transformation only, but also on the equal emphasis on the change of the external social structure for achieving peace. And sometimes they work in an overlapping way. So these are the Buddhist approach of conflict resolution in a brief. And when we see the feminist approach to conflict resolution, we see they are very critical about the traditional conflict resolution, which is developed from masculine point of view. And by masculine point of view, they understand by certain values, like it is a very goal-oriented, it is based on a fix-it approach, it is not inclusive, and women are not included in the conversation and dialogue. It is very militarized. All the problem related to security and an issue every time it is examined from a military and security perspective. So that were their contention, feminist contention, and they promoted women involvement in conflict resolution, definitely non-violence and peacemaking initiative and social justice. So what feminists have said that only a goal is not enough, like the conflict is fixed but we need a social justice, and also we need to promote non-violence and dialogue, and we cannot actually judge a particular situation from a military or security perspective. So that's what feminist approach to conflict resolution talk about. And we see that there is a commonality between feminist and Buddhist approach to conflict resolution, especially in terms of promoting values like non-violence, peace, inclusiveness, and ad hoc methods like mediation and dialogue, and also a greater change, a broader perspective, not only a fixed state approach, and also bottom-top approach, not a top-to-bottom approach. So, but feminist approach to conflict resolution, they didn't do that much work on feminine qualities or maternal ethics or ethics of care, or the feminists who have talked about and promoted maternal thinking as a way of distinctive thinking to understand and analyze the world. There was not that much work on maternal thinking, although we find in practice it might be there that feminists are talking about nonviolence, inclusiveness, but in terms of theory, there is not much work on feminine qualities. So a possible area for more collaboration is more collaboration between Tibetan Buddhism and feminism is conceptualizing feminist or feminine qualities, particularly motherhood, as an approach to conflict resolution. So maternal thinking and ethics of care from feminist work, can be linked to Tibetan Buddhist approach to nonviolence, compassion, empathy, and interdependence and emptiness as well. In this regard, motherhood needs to be understood going beyond essentialist frame and biological determination of sex as a framework, as a lens, as a distinctive thinking. As I mentioned before, that Tibetan Buddhism talk about motherhood not in the sense of kindness, but also from the perspective of renunciation and emptiness, and that is very much required, like a kind of detachment from the world and not to attach to the outcome of the conflict, but to focus on the process of the conflict and the non-violence, and also to understand that although this world is a illusion, but definitely, the work of bodhicitta or compassion or kindness should continue. So that area could be an area where feminist conflict resolution could work in terms of promoting maternal thinking, that not necessarily we need to actually focus on the goal of conflict resolution, but we can focus on the process and to promote more maternal qualities in the process, and to see the process as a avenue for making change in the society rather than focusing on the goal, which is short term. So now I would like to talk about His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, who has adopted non-violence to approach the conflict, which is definitely a part of his political life, that is China-Tibet conflict. And we have seen that how he has successfully framed the conflict resolution between China and Tibet from the lens of empathy, non-violence, interdependence, connection, and relationships. And so there was definitely a temptation that was placed before him to go for a hardcore movement like boycotting Chinese product or some kind of supporting some kind of violent movement in Tibet, but he himself never supported it. I remember there was one video in YouTube where his disciples are telling to go for boycotting Chinese product, and he himself was very much against it, saying that it is going to actually give suffering to the common Chinese people. But definitely he was extremely vocal about the human rights violation that was happening in China. Among his 5 principles or 4 principles of life, which where he is very much committed to, all these principles actually resemble motherhood, like compassion, forgiveness. I think only one, except one value, and that is self-discipline. And the rest of the values very much reflect motherhood values, which he wants to promote in his lifetime. So in general, His Holiness approach to conflict includes non-violence and dialogue as a means of conflict resolution, and that we have seen in the case of China and Tibet, that although he has been failed in the traditional or in a Western sense, but definitely he has been stick to the concept of non-violence, and he was very much influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. He has mentioned it several times. And he never gave up of pursuing this conflict resolution from a policy of nonviolence. And he talks about human rights and peace. And among his 5-point peace plan for Tibet, he has emphasized the concept of human rights and peace there. And as I said before, that in a traditional Buddhist means to conflict resolution, the influence of human rights is profound, and that we can find his approach to conflict resolution. Harmony with environment, like he never talked about a very dominant hegemonic masculine value which believes in dominating an environment for promoting development, but in his 5-point peace plan, he talks about creating a harmonious peaceful zone in Tibet, and where all the development activities will be held, so that environmental balance will be there and peace will be promoted. So it will not be a very aggressive development, which ecofeminists talk about a masculine model of development that he also challenged. Definitely, his conflict resolution is gender inclusive. He is very much committed to promoting women in the peace and security. So he has often talked about some Buddhist concept in when he talks about his relationship to China, and that includes inner transformation, karma, and interdependence. So in his book, Freedom in Exile, he talks about the concept of karma to understand that why Tibetan people are suffering, and not in a way to blame Tibetan people, but also as a way to understand that whatever is happening, it is happening for a reason, and both of the sides have a role to play in this situation. He also talked about karma often, and there was one incident in 2007 when His Holiness was supposed to visit Belgium, and at the time China had an issue, and China requested the government of Belgium that they don't like His Holiness Dalai Lama to visit there, and the Belgium government let His Holiness know, and His Holiness disciples were actually waiting in Belgium to welcome him for a long time. But His Holiness said that he doesn't want to go to Belgium at that time because it will hamper the relationship between Belgium and China, which is not of his policy. So at the time when he was asked how he sees it, he talked about karma, that it is a karmic thing. So we see that definitely he has conjoined karma and the traditional Buddhist approach with a modern notion of conflict resolution. But all these things are framed by some values, which we can tell that, values of motherhood, that feminists talked about, some feminists, that how maternal thinking can be a distinctive way of thinking, and there can be lots of overlapping areas between Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and feminism in that sense. But as I said, the Tibetan Buddhism talk about renunciation and emptiness, which feminism doesn't talk about. So in that case, His Holiness can be said as a symbolizations of motherhood that is based on both the feminist aspect of maternal thinking as a distinctive category and Tibetan Buddhist approach. His Holiness was also told as a personification of motherhood by the, very famous radical feminist Kamala Basin. So from there, we can understand that it is possible to construct motherhood going beyond gender as a value, as a distinctive category, but not something as a completely abandoning women issue, but including women issue within it. So my last presentation, or my last slide, is that motherhood is considered to be an unfinished agenda of feminism and need to be liberated from patriarchal oppressive structure. That is the feminist lens, that they have not come to a conclusion that how motherhood can be liberated from the question of gender. And secondly, whether motherhood should be integrated into the mainstream political feminism as a way of empowering women, because there is a suspicion about that, and there is a legitimate reason for this suspicion, because women are often confined on the excuse that they are mothers, they are feminine, so they shouldn't go and pursue the career. So from that history, they have a legitimate reason to suspect motherhood. But as I said, that there are several feminists who have promoted the idea of maternal thinking, and they have said that it needs to be liberated from the patriarchal view and lens. In Tibetan Buddhism, we see that motherhood is beyond gender and highly cherished ideal for every action. However, the concept of motherhood in Tibetan Buddhism is different in the sense that it includes insight from emptiness and renunciation. Like, it is not only about compassion and kindness, but also about endowment of emptiness and renunciation. So feminism and Tibetan Buddhism can enrich each other to develop the concept of motherhood as a distinctive thinking or lens to approach to conflict resolution. So with that, I want to conclude my presentation. If anyone is interested to know about the references that the feminists talk about promoting motherhood as a distinctive category, here are some reference which includes Carol Gilligan's work, Sarah Rudolph's work, Andre O'Reilly's work, Annie Klein's work, Meeting the Great Bliss Queen, Buddhist Feminist and the Art of Self. So thank you so much for listening to me.